Hey everyone, it's good to see you guys. I'm really excited today. I have a special guest. Her name is Jodi Aman. She's a practicing psychotherapist who has worked with people, 35 people a week for the last 20 years in Rochester, New York. She got her master's in social work from Columbia University in 1996 and has studied and taught narrative therapy. She's focused on trauma and anxiety, but now she's moving more towards focusing on relationships. And her last best-selling book was called 𝑦𝒐𝒐𝒏𝒊 Anxiety Zero, which shows readers how to win their life back from fear and panic and helping them find peace. Jodi, I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks so much for taking some time and being here with us. It really means a lot.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
So I wanted to have right now, Laura can't be here for the interview. Unfortunately, she had some other stuff come up last minute, but what we've really been doing for the last 2 months has been focusing on relationships. And I'm sure within your therapy practice, you've come up with that issue or that topic a lot. Can we talk a little bit about like codependent relationships and interdependent relationships and really the nature of relationship itself?
Yeah, sure. I really feel like, codependence, this word codependence, because it was hooked to AA or alcoholism, it's kind of got a bad rap. It's literally, though, the word codependence is not a bad thing. It's just got a negative connotation just because the way we've used it in our culture. But humans are social beings. So we are interdependent. We are codependent, like synergistic in terms of how we relate to each other. Like we need other people, we need our community, we need our family. And so, but it's like we have this individualistic culture right now, and we value individualism and being really independent, and that's good for like sovereignty, like knowing your sovereign power and making your own choices and like, being comfortable with yourself in the world. But what's also happening is that we think that we have to be independent, and that's causing us to kind of isolate us from each other and not let people in. And, we're not a self in a vacuum. We're only a self in a relationship. We're only a person. Like we only see ourselves as how we're reflected off the people around us. That's really important, Jared, right? Because if you're with somebody who is not very nice to you, that reflects back, like that's how you see yourself then, right? And so if you're with people who lift you up, and so that's a good point going forward, is like being with people who see you, love you, lift you is really important to when we're making choices in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this, Laura and I talk about mirror work and how a lot of the times people in our life can be reflections of how we're showing up or how we are in the relationship with ourselves.
Yes, exactly. Like if we have issues, it'll show up all around us in all our relationships. But when I say that, I need to have a caveat, because people are going to hear that and think, oh, if people are mean to me, it's my fault. And that's not what I really mean. Of course we attract the people we think we're worth. And so there's part of it that's, and not setting limits with those people or allowing them to continue. Yes, we could take some responsibility and we could take some sovereignty, but it is not our fault that people are mean to us.
Right.
It's hard to separate that from people. It's very confusing how to understand that, how to not blame yourself, but how you could take control without blaming yourself. That's a hard one.
Yeah. I like that topic. Can we go a little bit deeper into that? Because I was actually just talking with a client the other day who she was in this relationship, and she kind of recognizes that she has an anxious attachment style. So she really wants the relationship to work. There's a little bit of that clinginess. And sometimes her boyfriend gets really defensive when she tries to cling. And he's like, well, you're trying to latch onto me, and this relationship feels anxious to me now. Like, I don't feel like I have space. And she was kind of beating herself up because she would get clingy and then he would get defensive or closed off, which would make her want to even cling more. And then she would feel crazy, and then she would beat herself up for feeling crazy.
And need him even more.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you see people get out of that dynamic when the relationship starts heading in that direction? How do you see people get out of that?
Well, I think it's important to understand why people get defensive, because then it won't make you feel insecure. You'll realize that you have some control. So it's all about like helping people see where they do have that control or where they do have that power, because all of our anxiety, all of our stress is from feeling disempowered. And when you feel insecure and you want reassurance, but that person's more defensive, you're going to feel more disempowered, right? More crazy, more stressed. And so trying to find when you are insecure, a lot of times it comes across to the other person as like an accusation that they haven't been affectionate enough, or they haven't spent enough time with you, or they're, not paying enough attention to you. It comes across. So the person, your partner, feels that insecurity as if they've done something wrong, and that's why they get defensive. It feels like an accusation. And the person who's insecure doesn't mean it like that at all, right? So when you understand that the person feeling accused, and that's why they're getting defensive, because they're not being seen, they're not being validated. If you're insecure and you know that your partner's feeling invalidated, then what do? You could give them validation. So that's, I've made several videos about this, thinking about, if you're feeling insecure and you want some affection, what if you gave that affection instead of complaining about not giving it? And when you give that affection, the other person could respond in ways that it's like win-win for both parties.
Right. I love that. Yeah. It's better because, sometimes we can end up criticizing another person when we're really just asking for our needs met on a unconscious level, I think. And any complaint is more of just like, hey, I have my needs. But then a lot of times your partner, the partner can interpret that as, oh, I'm not showing up good enough in the relationship. And then they take it as a criticism. So then naturally they go into self-protective mode and they close off.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's really interesting. Like, Laura and I have been talking about this worldview of Tantra, and Tantra's worldview, not the sex type of stuff that most people relate it to. It's more about creating the energy within yourself in order to bring that in. And so if you want more affection and more love, you naturally become more affectionate and loving and give that off. And then naturally you see that reflected back to you.
Exactly. So you want to be that person in the relationship that you want back. But also, Tantra is about transfiguration. It's like seeing the light in the other person. And I think in some ways that's what you want back, right? You want them to see that light in you, when they look at you, that you want them to see like your heart, your soul, like all of you. And that's what would validate, make us feel, so loved and worthy. And so if we do that for somebody else, and if it's a mutual, sometimes there's people who just can't respond that way. You have to know that too. All of this is a caveat. Anytime you're teaching about relationships, it all depends on so many different things, because if you're not with a person who could meet you there mutually, or is as mature as you or whatever, then you could go till you're blue in the face and it would be one-sided and it doesn't serve you. So it's hard to find out like where are those red flags, where you have to know like, and then where are those people that will be able to meet you there, and when you're giving, it comes back like multifold back at you.
Right. Well, Jodi, I'm really excited to go into this because I literally just was on a call with a woman the other day who asked me, she said, Jared, if we've never been shown a certain type of love, like, do we have the capability to show that love to other people? And I thought it was a really great question, because I've wondered that myself. Sometimes I like to think that, yes, we are all 100% independent and divine and all this other stuff. But the reality of it is like, if we've never, I don't know, my experience has been, if I've never been shown a certain level of love or a certain level of like attention or listening to or care, then I wasn't able to give that to someone else until I was shown it. And so I guess the question here would be, if we want that sense of love and connection with another human being, is it possible for us to give that to someone if we've never been shown it?
Well, it's interesting. You're asking a couple different questions, but she knows this exists, right? So she knows this other love exists that she's never seen before,
Hmm.
perhaps, because she's saying, "Do I need to have seen it before I could give it?" Well, the fact that she knows this exists, that she means that she's seen it somewhere. Like she has
Mm.
seen it or experienced it in some way. Maybe not personally, maybe just in literature, I don't know. But the fact that she has some access to knowing that it is there is enough, because that's what you just have to know. And sometimes when you know the negative, like not negative, I don't want to say that, but like when you know deep sorrow, like you
Hmm.
can't know joy unless you've known deep sorrow. You
Hmm.
can't know um, happiness unless you've known like deep sadness. Like there, you need to really understand the opposite of something to really feel it. And so sometimes I feel like if you've been shown this degrading, relationships that degrade you all the time, then you would know this love because it would feel so different. It would be like the opposite feeling, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And
Yeah.
that's what, unfortunately, I mean, another caveat here, like if you were, that's why abusers keep their people. Like when you're abusing, you show that full on worth, like treat someone like a queen, and then they're always trying to get back to that, they've
Right.
seen
Right. You
that.
lead with that. You lead
They
with the
have,
showing.
you
Yeah.
lead that, and once in a while you bring that back online, and that keeps a person
Oh.
thinking like that's who the real person is, and that's
Mm.
what keeps them there. And so so they usually, you've seen that, even if you've been in terrible relationships, it exists.
Mm.
And
Well,
so to question whether you deserve it or not at each second, that's a whole different conversation.
right, right. Well, it's almost like if you've been shown that really deep negative way of relating, like, and it takes you to those really deep places within yourself where you weren't respected or honored or cherished. When you go to that deep level, it also like lets you know what's really important to you. Like I know for me in past relationships that I had where I wasn't shown that love and respect. I eventually got to a place where I was like, well, forget this. I'm not being loved. I'm not being cherished. I'm not being honored. And I refuse to not be respected in this way. Like when you experience those feelings of being in that relationship, it really helped me at least develop a value system of being honored and being respected and giving that to other people. And if I'm not shown that, then I just like, okay, like I'm out, you know?
Right, exactly. And there's one of those stories a lot of people say, if you've had that abuse, then you repeat it, but it's not really true. It's a very small percentage. So you could have, you talk to two brothers, and one, is in jail, and the father's in jail, and two brothers, one's in jail. It's like, why did you do what you did? Because I had this example. And you talk to the other brothers, why did you not do that? Oh, because I had the example. Right? You
Yeah.
could choose. But really, like if you're talking about like alcoholism, it's a very small percentage. It's higher than the regular population percentage of children of alcoholics drink again, but it's like 17%. And maybe the regular population is less, but there's still like 80 something percent who don't, who are
Mm.
coming from that experience of having their parents drinking and deciding not to. It's a much higher percentage. And I think we don't recognize that very much, because
Mm.
we're always looking for a deficit mentality, right? We're always looking for our negatives and what our inadequacies, and never really noticing like, that's pretty awesome. That's
Right.
pretty awesome
Yeah.
to have that experience and be like, I don't want that for my kids. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think it's any experience that we get in life, there's always something. I think it's important to honor the feelings that it created for us, but also to honor the fact that it is showing us something about our value systems or how we want to live. I mean, I know I can look back at how my parents related and thought and think like, wow, I'm definitely not having relationships that way. And it led me to create life and relationship in a very different way. And we might take on some of those patterns, but we can learn through them as well too. Everything
Yeah,
can be used as a tool for reflection and clarifying and defining our values.
exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
You know, when I was jotting down a few things to talk about, I definitely wrote down values, how important that is in relationships and in finding a good match, you know.
Do you
So
want to I would love to take the conversation in that direction.
great.
Cool. How important, Jodi, how important do you see as values being in a relationship, and like understanding your values and communicating those values with your partner?
I think that if you look at the opposite, the biggest cause for conflict is difference in values. So
Mm,
people who are, if you want to find a good match, find somebody who has the similar values that you do. You know, about how to take care of other people, or how to, you know, live in a house, or what's important to you in terms of money. A lot of people disagree about financial, you know, we have different ways of looking at things, different ways of caring for their house, or different ways of, you know, just going forward in the world. How do you want to spend your time? Doing fun things or staying at home? And if those don't match, those cause the most amount of conflict in relationships, I would say.
Well, is there a way? Because I mean, when I look at a relationship, there's so many like there's so many variables coming into play. There's value systems, ways of seeing the world, worldviews, like all this stuff. And so it's really a big source of confrontation or conflict for a lot of individuals. And it's amazing to me how much our society doesn't focus on emotional intelligence growing up. Like we focus so
Yes.
much on science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm like, I'm like, guys, from the societal view, I'm like, so many people would be happier if they understood, you know, relationship dynamics. Because I think, you know, I don't know if you've heard of the study done at Harvard where they reviewed, they studied like 768 men over the course of 75 years. And all these men, because it started back in like the 20s, they only studied men because of sexism then, but they studied 768 men, and they found over the course of 75 plus years, all these men said that the most important thing to creating a happy life for yourself and finding contentment and peace was being a part of social community and being in healthy relationships. And these were men who were poor, who were rich, who had fame, who didn't have fame. Across the board, it was social community and emotional connection with another person. And like that to me is amazing, because our society has not adapted to that finding at all. I mean, I still
Yeah,
see
and
so
that's
much.
not the only research. There's research projects all over with the same results, Jared. The
Mm,
same results is that relationship with social relationship and close relationships, like community and number one, the most important thing. And most
wow.
people come to counseling because problems in relationships. Most people commit suicide because problems in relationships. You know,
Mm,
it is this is like the significant, like I said, we are a self in relationship. We're not a self in a vacuum. So our significant relationships, our closest relationships, are so important. They're witnesses of our lives. You know,
right.
if we weren't witness, we'd be like untethered. It's very weird. Like isolation is very damaging to the human psyche. And so we have these significant relationships because, you know, then we have a witness, like we matter, we mean something, we're seen. But of course, if these significant relationships are negative, either we don't have them because we're totally isolated, and they don't have to be romantic. They,
Hmm.
you know, I'm not saying if you're single, you're not okay. They don't have to be romantic. You just have to have like a daily relationships with people, or else
Hmm.
that you feel so socially isolated, and it doesn't, and we could get stuck in the negativity with that. But when we have significant relationships who lift us up, who love us, who really see us, you know, our self-worth is online, you know, our self-esteem is okay. We feel really grounded and solid. It's so important as humans.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I love studying. I was an anthropology major in my undergrad, and I remember just studying some of the ways that I don't like. Primitive isn't the right word to use because they're totally not primitive. Um, tribes out in the Amazon and things like this, the way that they keep their tribe emotionally healthy. And a lot of the times it's like when someone's hurting emotionally or someone's wanting to, you know, self-inflict harm upon themselves, they come together as a tribe and they like all place their hands on that individual. Like there's such a communal mindset in those tribal cultures that I think because of the way our society has evolved with technology and with there's a bunch of other things that we could go into, but just the way that we've evolved, we've kind of forgotten how important relationship is to living a healthy and happy life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, a communal culture and an individualistic culture are very different on the psyche. That those experiences are shared. Even the negative experience or war experiences, those experiences are shared. So it's not an individual problem. And so in our individualistic culture, capitalism, postmodern culture is all individualistic, right? Western culture is, we're just ourselves and we're supposed to handle everything ourselves and we're supposed to do everything ourselves. And that's not really how humans are meant to work.
Right.
It's only been like the last like 100, even our small households is hurting us, they've done studies, kids who have grandparents in their house do better on a lot of different factors. Like we even live with a smaller number of people. This is the first time in human history, right? In the last 50 years, this has really been a huge shift. Into more and more the individualistic culture instead of going the other way, and it's hurting our emotional intelligence and our ability to thrive. And that's why you see a lot of anxiety and depression increasing, like everyone's on SSRIs, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a cultural issue. It's not an individual issue.
Right.
But, yeah, and that's why I agree. I'm like, I teach people all the time how to have self-compassion. If we were taught that in middle school, it would save us so much suffering. It's so easy. But why aren't we just taught this in middle school, to have compassion for ourselves? And instead we're encultured to look at our deficits and see what's wrong and focus on them.
Right. And we're I think, just to add to that, Jodi, I think we're encultured to look at our deficits and then actually get upset and angry at ourselves and judge those deficits as to looking at them as, wow, what are these signs of what I'm missing in my life? It's like,
exactly.
I was just talking with my other sister the other day, and she was going through some relationship issues. And it kind of broke my heart because she was sharing with me, like, she was having trouble with the relationship and she was getting like really abusive, like self-abusive. And I just told her, I was like, Faith, that is not your fault at all. I was like, do you realize that you haven't been equipped with the tools to understand and to deal with the relationship? Like, what I'm seeing you right now is you just don't have the capability to handle what's happening, and that's not your fault. And like, just me expressing that to her, she just like started crying. It was, like,
what a relief.
But like,
that's what I said. If she's alone and thinking that negative stuff in her head, it spirals and gets worse and worse. She lets it out to somebody else and gets that reflected back. It's so healing. That's what I mean by, like, we need witnesses, because when we're isolated, that negativity keeps going and going and going.
Right.
But we talk it out, we could just eliminate it so fast,
Right. Well, Jodi, how would you say, what's the best way to deal with that? Like, if someone's caught in that emotional spiral where they're feeling like they're incapable of having a healthy relationship, or maybe they're beating themselves up for not being able to create a healthy relationship, like, what's the best thing that they can do? Because a lot of the times, like, I know for me, when I look back at my own life, there were times where I didn't even know. I just didn't have a clue. I would go hit the bottle, or go flirt with women, womanize or something like it, just because I didn't have the emotional intelligence as to what was happening within me.
Right.
So a lot of times, like, people don't even know that they're spiraling down, and so they turn to these other forms of coping.
Right. Well, I mean, I hope they find me somehow. Like, I work with people all the time, and they've had a series of bad relationships, and they think that that's, that they're the problem. They always pick these bad relationships. But from the get-go, I tell them, listen, I've talked to women for 23 years. I've been doing this for 23 years, coaching people. And you could have a series of bad relationships and then have a good relationship, a beautiful, wonderful, mutually good relationship. It happens all the time. Just knowing
Mm,
it's possible, because they've decided, their belief has told them that it's not possible, probably because they're damaged or whatever. And so the first step, the very first step, is knowing that it is possible, even after bad relationships, to have a wonderful, wonderful relationship. They are out
mm,
there, and it's
mhm.
absolutely possible. And then you start to kind of, deconstruct what's happened in the past, and what, and when you're in that new relationship, even though it's wonderful, it's hard to trust. And so you probably, in that situation, you could use a coach to really help you not, get insecure and cause that person to push you away, or that kind of thing. And so
Definitely.
it's easy. It's not even hard. It's like, you work with me a little while and you know how to.
Mm, yeah, beautiful. What would you say, like, if someone's in a relationship and they start seeing like a downward spiral, like maybe they're not feeling heard or listened to or validated by their partner, um, what's one of the first things, I guess, that they could do that would allow them to kind of gain self-confidence and trust in the relationship?
Well, there's a lot of reasons that that could be spiraling, so it's hard for me to give a blanket response to that. But I think the first thing is, when you're testing out, like, is this something real, or is this something I'm creating? I don't know. There could be a lot of different scenarios there. So the first thing you do is wanting to kind of assess, and I would do that giving. I would be more loving and more affectionate, and see if it's reciprocated. Because maybe
Mm-hmm.
the other person just was feeling that you were pulling away, and so they were pulling away. And if
Right.
you give more affection in that, and then they come back, then that would be my first thing to do, to
Okay.
see if if that's the problem, if that other person is insecure also, and they're just pulling away. And so you showing up a little bit more in that relationship could bring them, and then you're set. Everything's good. But then if that doesn't work, then you have to keep kind of going. But that would definitely be the first thing I do.
Okay. And Jodi, this kind of brings me back to that question. Do you really see people, because I've had this conversation probably more in the last 2 months than I've ever had in my entire life. And it's, do
These have been a
people,
weird 2 months, though, Jared.
it has been a weird 2 months. You're right.
You can't talk about May and April in 2020 as anything
Right.
other than weird.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you really think, like, if someone's been knows that that type of relationship is out there, where like there's authenticity, there's mutual support, there's love, because sometimes people are caught in that hopeless or that despair phase where they've hadn't had good relationships, and because they haven't had good relationships, they think that there's something wrong with them, or they think that their patterns or like are they can't have a healthy relationship. Like, do you think if someone hasn't been shown that love or that level of support or emotional intelligence in a relationship, that they can still get that? And how?
I think there's places to find it, even if you don't have it. If you haven't had it personally, there's places to find those examples. So even
Mm,
if it's like I said before, in literature and movies, and seeing your friends being close, like you you could witness it, and then you could know that it's possible and create it. Because if it's possible somewhere, it's possible for you. It's
yeah.
interesting, because recently, right before the shutdown, I was on 2 retreats, and most of them were young women, and
Mm,
or middle age, like 30. I'm young for me. They were like 20s, 30s, and they didn't have those. I've been in a monogamous relationship for 24 years, right? So that I'm coming at this, not only working with couples for 23 years, I've been in a super conscious relationship with my partner for 23 years, 25 years now, if you don't count before we were married, if you count before we were married. And these women were like, it's possible. Like, they
mm,
never met anybody like me. They never,
right.
I'm sure they
Right.
have a little bit, but like I'm sure they have an aunt or somebody who's had a nice relationship, or a mentor or something. But it's so rare. I don't know why it's so rare, because it's so possible. I have a lot of peers who have that super conscious relationship. It is very possible, but it's like it opens something for these women to be.
Yeah.
It's possible. Like they were just like, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's real. Like there's really men like that out there. Yeah, there's
Right.
really men. There is. That's the other thing. I mean, first you blame yourself, but also you're like, oh, men are imperfect, and so there's never going to be one. There are some that are super conscious and and really open and able to love, and able to put their
Mm,
ego aside and be in that partnership if you show up the same way, and give
right.
just as much. But it is possible, and I think that's the message that we have to get out there, and channels like your channel here is like, get that message out that it's so possible, because then we'll all look for it and be ready for it and call it in on both sides. Like
Yeah.
men and women have to watch this and know it's possible, and then they'll all show up for it.
I love that. I love that. And I totally agree. I mean, it's great to see you doing, I mean, I know you've been doing this work for much
Yeah.
longer, but I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do the work that I do, because relationship really is healthy. Relationship is so key to living a healthy, fulfilling life. It's so key to the human heart. And I think a lot, when I look back at my life, when I look back at some of the lives of my clients, I can see where they're just, one, maybe they didn't have the skills or the know-how as to how to create that type of relationship or how to be that way. And that's, I think, a societal thing, like we talked about earlier in the interview, where society, we could definitely do a better job of preparing our
Yeah.
our youth for that. I mean, especially when I look at my generation, I'm 30 years old, but a lot of the millennials, like, hookup culture seems to be like a really big thing. And I just see it as, it's heartbreaking, because it's like, well, you're trying to create all these physical connections with people, really trying to find a deeper emotional connection, and just not knowing that. And I've
Yeah.
known that probably since I was about 23. I remember I had the aha moment after I hooked up with a girl, and I just remember being like, that wasn't satisfying. What was that really about? And then, like, a voice came and it's like, Jared, your heart wants a deeper connection. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? So but we're not really taught any of this growing up. And if we haven't had it modeled in our parents' relationships, and and we certainly don't have it modeled in media, because that's not what sells at all. I think
Right.
I think that this information and this work needs to get out into the world. And I love seeing channels like yours, like mine, like others, some of the other people that I've been interviewing, who are bringing an awareness to these higher level, not even higher level, I guess we could just say they're really actually the natural ways of relating. I think we've just gone so
Yeah.
far in the opposite direction as a culture. I think these narratives and these ways of relating are really important to bring awareness to.
Yes, I do agree. I agree. It's like when you are in some drama relationship and caught up in what's, it's like you're facing each other. And these super conscious relationships, like you're secure
Mm-hmm.
together and looking out into the world, kind of living your purpose and creating a new world that we need to create. And I think that's where we need to go in this future, really. The
Mm,
couples who are, like sometimes there's addiction to the drama of it. I don't want
right.
to criticize anybody, but they're like facing each other and they're in all they're trying to do, and then there's these relationships that are like, do that stuff so connected. It's like infatuation and love, maybe, or I don't even know how to categorize it, but that's what we want to create, these relationships that have that utter support, like so complete support that they're both able to do what they need to do in the world, but together.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I do see this, the addiction to drama. Well, one, it's like painted by the culture. Like, you look at every single movie from Disney to, you see, like, there's this long, arduous battle for about 90 minutes. And then the crux and emotional part of the movie is when the love can finally come together. And it's like, oh, after all of this hard work and fighting and arduous, like, the couple finally comes together and they kiss or they make love, or, and then that's the end of the movie. So there's definitely this cultural conditioning around being addicted to the drama, and love being this war. I think there's this all is fair in love and war, which I like hear that. I'm like, my God, like, that should not be That should not be
Yeah.
it at all.
Yeah.
But that's definitely what's upheld as like the prime relationship, where it's like, no, relationships where they're just, at least I think that we can design them, or they are naturally designed to be mutually supportive, so we can feel safe and secure in them, so we can go out in a very uncertain world and create and serve humanity, do our gifts
Exactly. I
and
love
share.
that. Yeah, I love that. And it's they are hard work. Like relationships are hard work, but they're so worth it because you get it back. You know,
Right.
it's like, yeah, a good relationship has that support, that mutual support, and that grounding, that connection, so that you could do this stuff. But you still put time and work into it, but it comes back to you in a way that it doesn't seem like work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's work though. Like I work really hard at my relationship. I do a lot of stuff, but I don't really call it hard work, sort of. It's effort. I guess effort's a better word for it. I've definitely put effort in, but lovingly and so happily, like, gift this effort and I get it way all back and more.
Right, right. Jodi, I want to ask like two more questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. Does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Cool, cool. So Laura probably would want me to ask this question because she always asks it every interview. But do you think, like, if you're in really good relationship with yourself, like you know how to self-soothe, you really care for yourself, you're there for you. Like for me, when I'm feeling tired, like I take a nap. When I'm feeling stressed out, I know that I'm stressed out. I feel it, and sometimes I'll just place both hands over my heart, and or if I feel anxiety,
Hmm.
I'm in relationship with myself. When you know how to be in relationship with yourself and self-soothe and give yourself what you need, is there really a need to be in a relationship with another person? Is there value in that?
Yes, because we're not a self in a vacuum.
Mm,
So maybe some very high level spiritual people could like go to the cave and meditate, but they're in really strong relationship to the divine if they could do
mm,
that. Otherwise, that's not, we're social beings like that. We've evolved, our brain evolves that we need community to thrive. And so when we are in isolation, even if we could do that, that is a relationship with ourselves. So there's still like two, me and myself. So there's still
mhm,
somebody. And also it could be a little bit of your relationship with spirit, right? Or the
mhm,
divine. If those kind of self-care things cross that realm into spirituality, then there is a relationship with another as well. But we do need relationships with other people. Again, it doesn't have to be romantic. So you don't need a man to define you or something if you're a woman like that, or a gay man. And but you don't need it to be romantic. it could be it could be any relationship with people,
mm.
and hopefully in a daily level. Like sometimes, okay, you can have a whole day alone. That's why this social isolation is so hard for people who are totally alone, who are isolating totally alone, have no touch. We need touch.
Oh
We
yeah.
need touch. Yeah, romantic touch and also friendship touch. Any touch, like we need touch. Like that's
Yeah.
how we're created. We're humans are the only primates that don't have social grooming. And
Mm,
social grooming is, yeah, to get the bugs off, but also it's a way to adjust your nervous system, right?
mhm,
It's a way to calm your nervous system. They do that in the community and these other primates, and we don't have that but we use touch other ways. So yes, we need relationships. So we could be there for ourselves, and we need relationships, but it's not like we need them to. It's There's so much discourse in our culture, like you need to love yourself before you're in a relationship, but a lot of times relationships can heal us in that
right,
self-love way, right? So
right.
it's mutually beneficial. So I know a lot of people who have been so hurt in the past and don't like themselves, but then get in a relationship that's good and heal that for themselves. So it's not, I don't like that discourse. You have to love yourself before you love everyone else, because it makes people isolate themselves and wait longer.
Right, right. And then they're like, I got to fix myself before I can have that relationship. And then 20 years goes by and you're like, where did it all go?
You're in a vacuum, and if you're in a vacuum, you're not healing. You
Right.
only heal in relationships, right? We heal in relationships. It doesn't have to be romantic, but we heal in relationships. Relationships with the divine, relationships with ourselves, but we do need more than that
Beautiful.
to heal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I was reading something a while back. It's probably, I can't remember, but it's when we get physical touch, our brain does release that oxytocin,
oh
and
yeah.
there's that pair bonding that happens, and that oxytocin reduces levels of pain, makes us feel better in the body. And I think that's all incredibly important. Sometimes,
Calms our stress and anxiety. It just calms us down.
yeah, wow, yeah, beautiful. Jodi, I'm going to go to some questions to the audience. Does that sound good?
Great. Awesome.
Awesome. So I'm going to go to, it's not showing me who it is, but I see a lot of questions here.
Great.
All right. So this first individual, we're going to call them Facebook user. Okay. She says, when you say hard work in a partnership, what does it look like? An example of it would be great. So I guess
sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. You can go.
I would say, so I would make sure that, my partner's name's Ted. So I would make sure that Ted knows that I care about him. I'm thinking about him through the day. So it might be little sweet texts during the day, like I'm thinking about you or I miss you. I mean, we've been together 25 years. We still do that when we're at work. Now we're home together. So, we can look across the hallway at each other and be like, but at night, if I walk by, do you touch their shoulder, their arms, bend down and give him a kiss? Like if he's walking by my desk or I'm walking by his desk, we do those kind of things. We say thank you all the time. So see, it's effort and it's an extra step sort of, but it's not hard really. And excuse me for calling it hard. So when he makes dinner, I'm like, thank you so much. This is amazing. Thank you so much. I notice every little thing he does and say thank you for it. That's totally going to sustain him continuing to do it, right?
Right.
Anything.
Appreciation and acknowledgement.
The same thing comes to me. Like we thank each other for the littlest things. We thank each other for every little tiny thing. And it's really a magic. It's a magic that has made us so happy. We celebrate everything. When I do things during the day, I tell them the things I do. It's my way of kind of celebrating and having a witness to it, and vice versa. We love to laugh together, but making time, like it is effort to make time so that other person feels like you want to be with them. Watching the shows they want to watch instead of the ones you want to watch, even if you don't want to watch it. I like to walk early in the morning. He'd like to walk later in the morning. We compromise, those kind of things, like really simple, basic, practical stuff.
Yeah. I love that because I have a background in executive coaching. And one of the things that I do in executive coaching when I coach companies is to acknowledge the employees, like acknowledge and appreciate them.
Yeah.
I remember one time I took a CEO up to the front of his entire company. And I was like, who here feels acknowledged and appreciated by this man? And everyone was like, nope. And he had a closed off defensive ego. Everyone else had closed off defensive egos. And so I had him open up his arms and palms, and every single employee went up to him and shared their true thoughts and feelings. And it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. But at the end of that, he appreciated them and they appreciated his struggle as well too. And the whole company was together and thrived more after that. And so it's really like appreciation and acknowledgement is so key, not even just in romantic relationship, but just in relationship in general.
Exactly. I mean, that's the healing thing, right? So we age or we feel what damaged or whatever when we're not acknowledged, when we're invalidated, when we're dismissed. Those are the things that hurt us. And then, so the opposite of that, anything that makes us feel validated or worthy is going to lift us and heal us. And thank you. That's what I say when you're like at work and you have a really toxic person that works next to you or works in your office or something. That's where we start. We start by saying, "What if you just compliment like their earrings, like those little bits of you do an experiment and you could actually lift somebody out of that negativity. They desperately need some validation, that person, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jodi, there's a lot of other questions here, but I've wanted
Right.
to ask this question for really long,
Okay.
so I hope you can hear this. Um, I have this theory, and I could be completely wrong. I just want to hear your opinion on it. I have this theory that everyone who's out there in the world trying to do so much, like who's trying to accomplish so much, I have this thinking that it's just they've never been seen for who they really are. And there's this unconscious part of them who thinks that they want to do more and more and more just to be validated. And that means a part of them hasn't been validated. What are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes, yes, that's true. And then
Yeah.
sometimes people have worked through that, but they show up to serve and they just have a lot of energy to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it depends. So I think sometimes you see people that have just a lot of energy and are giving and are out there and they're okay. And then there's some people, and not that they're not okay, but there's some people that are really trying to fill something. And they're still in service and that's still in good ways, you know, but there's a probably there, you know, so there's a, it's not always the case of everybody who's, you know, famous.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's
If
fair
that
enough.
makes sense.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I mean, some people are really grounded in their stuff and they're doing that. Like, if you think of like Jennifer Gardner, like, you know, I use my intuition all the time. Jennifer Gardner feels really like grounded in her service. It doesn't feel like she does stuff just to get the attention, you know?
mm-hmm.
Like she's really like making it, she's funny. It's just like a really grounded way to use her influence to help other people or serve
Mm-hmm.
other people. And it just feels very authentic and genuine. It doesn't feel like she's trying to earn or worth by doing that. You could
Right.
tell. You could
Right.
tell actually when you watch any thought leader and that kind of, you could tell when you watch them who's authentic and who's like, you know, it's kind of about ego or that kind of thing. And you know,
Yeah.
that is a problem, that we don't feel worthy and we try to constantly prove our worth by overworking. That is a problem that some people have.
Right. Oh, it's definitely a problem that I used to have, and there's this great scale of burnout, and that's like I can't remember who the psychologist who did it, but the first thing is trying to prove oneself of worth in a new industry or job. It's like stage one of burnout. It's like trying to prove worth through performance and productivity.
Yeah. And
Uh,
so I'm like that. Like I overgive and I'm out there and I do all this stuff and I don't feel like that's what drives me to do it. So you know, I know that there's some people out there that it's not what drives them.
oh, sorry, Jodi, you went there for a little bit.
Oh,
You're
I
back
did.
now.
I did. Oh, okay.
Uh,
You've been here the whole time, so I didn't. You, all right. Did you miss what I just said?
yeah, it just went off at you give a lot, and then it went.
Oh yeah, I give a lot and I do a lot and I'm out there all the time and give more than, and it's not where it comes from me, for me.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
get that since I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm gonna take. Are you good for about 2 or 3 more questions here, Jodi, and then
Sure.
we'll wrap it
Sure.
up? Great. I'm gonna go to BJ's question here. He says, "What do you both suggest for finding heart connections with others? I'm frustrated and exhausted from closed-off people. It seems so many in our world are afraid of connection." It's a great question. I'm gonna leave that
Okay.
up.
So yeah, that's great, BJ, because first you have to find the people who are open and then, so how to find them? Yeah, that's your question. I guess, you know, in what context? Maybe in, you know, when you're looking for somebody, if you're looking for them in communities that are open spiritually, you may have some luck finding someone who's a bit more open. So that would be one suggestion is like, where's the pool from? You know, is
Mm,
it like online dating, or is there a pool? Like, are you looking for a pool of people who are open-hearted from open-hearted activities?
mm,
And so if you're doing the online dating, you might want to, you know, filter people out through the way you structure your profile description or whatever that's called in different platforms. So you'd want to really express yourself as open-hearted and calling in the right people to you and getting clear and putting that in there somehow. You might be able to weed some people out. But other than the online dating, like where would you show up that people who are already like on the spiritual path or open-hearted, who want those heart-centered connections, a meditation group, a yoga group, a retreat, those kind of things, you may find people who are a little bit more conscious, like a higher consciousness, and that seems to be what you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great response. And I know for if you're really good at it, you can kind of create it as well too. I mean, I live right outside of Denver, and I was at the Denver Convention Center before the whole COVID thing happened. And I was at this business conference, and so many of the people were like really cynical and closed off, and they were like joking, and they only knew how to connect through cynicism or sarcasm. And I was like, man, there's a lot of emotional, like baggage here. I can feel if that's the only way they really know how to connect. And I found that just kind of speaking to a person but doing it from a loving space, like, if you seem like you might be a little closed off to connection, and like, what's that about? Like, you can create it pretty easily.
Oh, I don't say that to a woman.
No. This is to a guy.
Don't say that on a first date, BJ. Closed off. There's something going on. What's up with that? They'd be like, see ya.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it all depends on really.
Right. I thought you were going to say, I listen. And, people feel loved when they're listened to. And so it helps them break down some of those defenses, walls that they have up. And so when they're really deeply listened to, or someone's really interested in what they're talking about, sometimes they bring the walls down, and they're able to kind of connect or be a little more present. Also, if people are interested in first dates out in nature, right now that's, I guess, where you're gonna have a first date, because you can't get inside anywhere with anybody. But because then you could really like, it's beautiful. Like, look at those trees. It's in those. It's contagious a bit. Like seeing that positive out there, seeing the beauty. And if someone's picking up on that, that might be a good person, like then you could kind of go further. And so I don't know, that's another tip, like first dates out in nature, where you're really, are they appreciating the beauty of that? Then that they're a little bit more open, because if you're in survival mode, you don't notice that stuff. You're in survival mode.
Right. Yeah. Well, and usually I've noticed, Jodi, too, is if a person's closed off, it's because they don't feel safe. And like right, that's exactly that's what you can do, is just make them feel safe. And really, if I notice anyone's closed off, my first question comes to mind is, how can I make this person feel safe and secure? And it's usually asking a question, showing up in a certain way in our being state. And then when we show up in that being state, they naturally open up.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know you mentioned about sarcasm and stuff to use as a mask. Humor could be used not as a mask as well. So humor could be used, because when you laugh, like, you increase your neuroplasticity in your brain. And so you do open it. It literally does open the brain up. And so I know a lot of times people use humor to kind of block stuff off, but sometimes humor, and a lot of times in my work with people, I use humor because it opens something in their mind, and they're able to change their beliefs a little bit. And so I love humor on dates.
I love that. I think that's great. I know for me in my coaching, sometimes there'll be times where, like, a person gets triggered, and the best way that I've found to deal with the trigger is to use like a reflective humor back. And immediately it just like the ego kind of like it resets, so if there's that kickback of, if there's that kickback of defensive ego, then it's just, you can use humor to kind of deflect that, and it just kind of puts it aside.
Exactly.
Great. Well, Jodi, I'm seeing here, is there any other questions that you have for Jodi? Any other questions that you want to bring up, or any insights that you want to share? Give it a couple minutes here.
Are they all men who are watching, or are they men and women?
So I get a real perfect blend, about 45% of men, 55% of women. 75% of the people that I coach, though, are usually women. And that's probably
because you were saying guys instead of it excludes women when you say that.
Yeah, I know. That's some of my own speech that I got to work on.
I know, you could work on it.
Any other questions that you have for Jodi? Everyone.
Friends, everyone.
Well, Jodi, thank you so much for coming on. I'm not seeing any more questions here. It's really been an honor and a delight to have you. Really, thank you so much for your time and your
Thanks,
energy.
Jared.
I'm going to ask one more question here. This is my favorite question to ask that I always bring on at the end of every episode. If you were to beam up or go home or die or go wherever you go after this, what's one message that you would leave with humanity? What's like one last message that you'd want everyone to share and that you'd want to give out?
I think that you're so much more awesome than you see right now. You're so much more incredible and have potential and have ability and power than you see.
That's
And you can see it if you wanted to. I mean, if you learned how.
I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Jodi, do you have any programs or what are you doing right now for the public and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I work one-on-one with couples and I work with individuals as well. So Jodi Amen, it's Amen, by the way, jodiamen.com. And I work with individuals and couples, and I also train people on using their intuition, especially it's good for dating, using your intuition in relationships. So I do a live intuition group. I have an online program, but I do a live intuition group that I run for people. And that's so you could use me individually or in a group.
Beautiful. And guys, if you want to check that out, just check out the YouTube description box right there. Her link is right there. You can go ahead and check all that out. Jodi, thank you so much for coming on again. It really means a lot. We appreciate your time and your energy.
Thanks so much, Jared. It was a blast.